At exactly 5 in the morning, the alarm in the apartment building screamed through the silence. Grace woke up with her heart racing. She was staying at a friend's house on the other side of town, but the alarm on her phone was linked to the security system in her own apartment. Whenever someone tried to enter, she got a notification. Her phone buzzed again. The screen showed, "Apartment door forced open, 5:02 a.m." A few seconds later, the security guard from her building called. "Good morning, ma'am." "Sorry to disturb you," he said in a tired voice. "There's a lady here who says she's the new owner of your apartment. She used a key, but the alarm went off. She says she has the papers." Grace sat up slowly. She already knew who it had to be. "Can you describe her?" she asked. "Young woman, maybe early 30s, the guard replied. "Long hair, expensive handbag, a bit bossy. She says she's your daughter-in-law." Grace let out a long breath. So it was true. The plan she had feared for months was finally happening. "Yes," Grace said quietly. "That sounds like my daughter-in-law." The guard hesitated. "Should I escort her out, ma'am?" Grace looked out the window at the gray morning sky. For a moment, she felt the old hurt in her chest, the years of small insults, fake sweet smiles, and whispered conversations that stopped every time she entered the room. Her son was caught in the middle, always saying, "Please, Ma, just keep the peace." But this time, there was no peace to keep. Grace's lips curved into a calm, almost sad smile. "No," she said. "Please let her in. She's about to get a surprise." The guard sounded confused but obeyed. "All right, ma'am. I'll let her head upstairs." "Do you want me to stay on that floor?" "Yes," Grace replied. "Stay close and please turn on your body camera. I want everything recorded." When the call ended, Grace opened the folder on her nightstand. Inside were copies of legal documents, bank statements, and one very important letter from her lawyer. She had been waiting for this moment. Her friend, who had heard the whole conversation from the other side of the room, sat up. "Is it her?" the friend asked softly. Grace nodded. "She thinks she owns my home now." "And does she?" the friend whispered. Grace's eyes were clear and steady. "She thinks she does," Grace answered. "But today, we will see who really owns what." She got out of bed, picked up her handbag, and slipped the folder of documents inside. Her hands were steady. She had stayed quiet for a long time. She had cried in private, smiled in public, and pretended not to notice what was happening. But not today. As she walked toward the door, she imagined her daughter-in-law standing in her living room, looking around like a queen inspecting her new palace. She imagined the shock that would appear when the truth finally hit. It was still dark outside when Grace stepped into the cool air and called a car. The driver asked, "Where to, ma'am?" Grace gave her address and then added, almost to herself, "Home. I'm going home to meet the new owner." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the quiet street behind. Grace rested her hand on her handbag, feeling the edge of the documents inside. This time, she was not going to be the silent, polite mother-in-law. This time, she was ready. Grace had not always been suspicious of her daughter-in-law. When her son first introduced her to the young woman, whose name was Lena, Grace had actually been hopeful. Lena was charming, always smiling, always bringing little gifts. On their first meeting, she brought Grace a basket of fruit and said sweetly, "I've heard so much about you. Your son says you're his hero." Grace's heart had warmed at those words. She was a widow. She had raised her son alone after her husband died many years ago. They had lived in a tiny rented room back then. Grace worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to pay for school fees and food. When her son became an engineer and bought her a beautiful apartment, it felt like a reward for all those hard years. So when he said he was getting married, Grace prayed that his new wife would be kind. At first, everything seemed fine. Lena kissed Grace on the cheek when she visited. She called her Mama. She posted smiling photos on social media, the 3 of them together, arms around each other. But after the wedding, small changes began. Lena started making jokes about the apartment. "It's nice," she would say, looking around with a tilt of her head, "but maybe too old-fashioned. When it's ours, I'll change everything." Grace thought Lena meant ours in a general way, family, not legal ownership, so she laughed it off. Then came the conversations about money. One evening, Grace walked into the kitchen and heard Lena's voice floating from the living room. "If the apartment was in your name," Lena was telling her husband, "we could use it as security for a loan. We could buy a bigger place, maybe start a business." Her son sounded uneasy. "But Ma loves that apartment. It's in her name, not mine." Lena's tone sharpened. "You're her only child. Whatever is hers will be yours one day anyway. Why wait?" When they saw Grace standing there, the conversation stopped. Lena quickly changed the subject, but the words had already stuck inside Grace's mind. From that day on, Grace watched more closely. She noticed how Lena complained about money even though she liked expensive things. She noticed how Lena always asked about documents, the will, the ownership papers, even the insurance. Then came the day of the health scare. Grace had felt dizzy and gone to the clinic. The doctor said it was nothing serious, just stress and low blood pressure. But that evening, Lena arrived at the apartment with a warm smile and a folder of papers. "Mama, you scared us today," she said kindly. "You need to rest. We just want to help you organize things in case something happens. Just simple paperwork." She laid out several forms on the table, explaining each one quickly, speaking fast, smiling brightly. "This is just to allow us to manage the apartment for you. Sign here and here. It will make everything easier." Grace's head was still hurting from the dizziness. Her eyes were tired. She almost reached for the pen. Almost. Then she remembered the conversation about using the apartment as security for a loan. She remembered how Lena always complained about not having enough money. Grace put the pen down. "Thank you, dear," she said softly. "But I'll show these to my lawyer first. My head is not clear today." For a moment, Lena's smile cracked. Her eyes turned cold, just for a second. Then the fake sweetness returned. "Of course, Mama. Whatever you feel is best," Lena said. After Lena left, Grace took the papers to her lawyer. The lawyer read them carefully and then looked up with serious eyes. "Do you understand what these are?" the lawyer asked. Grace shook her head. "If you had signed these," the lawyer said, "you would have given your daughter-in-law the right to sell or transfer your apartment without your permission." Grace felt the blood drain from her face. The lawyer helped her put extra protections on the property and advised her to install a new security system that recorded everything. Now, months later, as the car carried Grace back to the apartment at dawn, she thought about that day in the lawyer's office. Lena had tried once, quietly. When that failed, Grace knew it was only a matter of time before she tried again. And here they were, at 5 in the morning, with the alarm screaming. The sky was turning pale when Grace's car stopped in front of her building. She stepped out slowly, straightening her jacket. The security guard, Ravi, met her at the entrance, looking a little nervous. "Good morning, ma'am," he said. "She's already upstairs. I told her I had to reset the alarm, so she's waiting in the hallway outside your door." Grace nodded. "Thank you for calling me right away. Is your camera on?" Ravi tapped the small device clipped to his shirt. "Yes, ma'am. Everything's being recorded." They rode the elevator together in silence. Grace could feel her heart beating faster, but her face stayed calm. When the elevator doors opened, Grace saw Lena standing near her apartment door, arms crossed, a large designer handbag on her shoulder. She looked annoyed, as if someone had kept her waiting too long for a restaurant table. The moment she saw Grace, Lena's eyebrows shot up. "Mama?" she said sharply. "What are you doing here?" Grace walked toward her, keys in hand. "This is my home," Grace replied simply. "The better question is, what are you doing here at 5 in the morning saying you're the new owner?" Lena glanced at the security guard, then at the camera on his chest. She forced a laugh. "Oh, that was just a misunderstanding," she said. "I only meant—" "You told me on the phone that you are the new owner, ma'am," Ravi interrupted politely. "You showed me papers. I saw the name." Lena's smile tightened. "Fine," she said. "Let's not play games. I didn't want it to be like this, but your son agreed that this apartment should be in our name now. It's better for the family. Here." She pulled a folder from her handbag and waved it slightly in the air. "These are the new ownership documents, signed and stamped. I thought you were away, so I came to move some things." Grace looked at the folder but did not take it. Whose name is on those papers? She asked. Mine, Lena said, lifting her chin. But it's the same thing. We're one family, right? And you're getting old, Mama. Don't you want someone responsible to handle everything? The way she said old cut like a small knife. Grace opened the door to her apartment and stepped inside. The familiar smell of her favorite soap and the faint scent of last week's cooked rice welcomed her. She turned back to face Lena and Ravi. Please come in, she said. If you truly believe you are the owner, you won't mind showing those papers to my lawyer on a video call. Lena hesitated, then walked in with sharp steps, her heels clicking on the floor. Inside, Grace took out her phone and opened a video call with her lawyer, Mr. Patel. She had warned him earlier that something might happen, and he had promised to be ready. When his face appeared on the screen, Lena's confident expression flickered. Good morning, Mrs. Grace, Mr. Patel said. And who is this with you? This is my daughter-in-law, Lena, Grace said calmly. She says she is the new owner of my apartment. She has documents. We would like you to look at them. Ravi stood near the door, quietly watching, his camera still recording. Lena swallowed, but she had come too far to back down. She opened the folder, took out the papers, and laid them on the dining table. These are certified copies, she said. You'll see the signatures and the stamp. Mr. Patel asked Ravi to bring the papers close to the camera. Ravi did so. The lawyer's eyes moved quickly over the pages. Grace watched Lena's face while they waited. She could see a tiny tremor in Lena's hand as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Finally, Mr. Patel spoke. Mrs. Grace, he said, his voice firm, these documents are fake. The stamp is wrong, and the notary's name is misspelled. Also, your signature here has been copied from an old bank form. I have that form on file. Silence fell over the room. Lena's face went pale. That can't be, she started. It is, Mr. Patel said. I recommend you do not touch anything in that apartment and that you leave at once. Mrs. Grace has every right to file a complaint for forgery and attempted fraud. Grace did not raise her voice. She did not shout or insult. She simply looked at Lena with sad, tired eyes. You tried to steal my home, she said quietly. A home I worked my whole life for. Lena opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. For the first time since Grace had known her, the fake confidence was gone. Ravi stepped forward. Ma'am, he said to Lena, I will have to escort you out now. Lena looked from Grace to the door, her eyes filling with angry tears. You'll regret this, she hissed. Your son will hear about it. Grace's voice remained calm. He already knows more than you think. As Ravi led Lena out of the apartment, Grace's hands finally began to shake. She sat down slowly at the table, still holding the phone. Are you all right, Mrs. Grace? The lawyer asked gently. Yes, she said, taking a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, I think I am. Later that morning, Grace's son, Imran, arrived at the apartment looking worried and exhausted. He had already received a long, emotional message from Lena. The message said that Grace had attacked her, that the security guard had humiliated her, and that everyone was against her. She claimed the papers were real and that this was all a big misunderstanding. Imran loved his mother. He also loved his wife. For years he had tried to stand between them, trying to make both sides happy. It had drained him. He knocked quickly and stepped inside. Ma, he called. What happened? Lena is saying. Grace was sitting at the table with a cup of tea. The folder of fake documents and the video recording from Ravi's camera were on the table beside her. Sit down, Beta, she said softly. Let's talk. Imran sat, his shoulders tense. Lena says you embarrassed her in front of the guard. She says you don't accept her as family. She says you... Grace raised a hand gently. Before you repeat her words, I want you to see something. She played the recording from Ravi's camera. Every word was clear. Lena saying she was the new owner, waving the fake papers, and Mr. Patel explaining on the video call that the documents were forged. Imran watched in silence. At first his face showed confusion, then shock, then something like shame. When the recording ended, he pressed his fingers to his eyes. Ma, he whispered, I didn't know. Grace looked at her son, at the lines of stress around his eyes. "Did you sign anything?" she asked. He shook his head quickly. "No. She kept asking me to talk to you about putting the apartment in our name, but I told her it was yours and that I wouldn't take that from you. I swear, Ma, I thought she had accepted that. I never imagined she would—" His voice broke. Grace reached across the table and put her hand over his. "I believe you," she said. "I know my son." Tears filled Imran's eyes. "I'm so sorry, Ma. I brought her into your life." "I should have seen what she was doing." Grace shook her head gently. "Love makes us blind sometimes. You wanted peace. You wanted a happy home?" He nodded, wiping his face. "What will you do now? Will you go to the police?" Grace looked at the folder of forged papers. "Mr. Patel says we have a strong case," she said. "But he also says we can start with a warning. If she admits what she did and promises never to try again, we might avoid a big public mess." Imran closed his eyes for a moment. He knew Lena. He knew her pride. He knew she would not admit anything easily. "Can I talk to her first?" he asked. "Just once. Maybe if she understands how serious this is." Grace thought for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes," she said. "But I want you to remember something. No property, no apartment, no amount of money is worth your peace. If she is ready to destroy your family for this, she will do it again one day. You must decide what kind of life you want." Imran looked at his mother, at the woman who had carried him on her back when he was a boy, who had gone hungry so he could eat. He felt a deep ache in his chest. "I don't want you to be hurt anymore," he said quietly. "Whatever happens next, I will stand with the truth." Grace's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of relief. "That is all I ask," she whispered. Later that afternoon, Imran met Lena at a cafe. The conversation was long and painful. He showed her the video, the lawyer's comments, and the risk she had taken. Instead of apologizing, Lena became angry. "So you're choosing her over me?" she said, her eyes flashing. "Your old mother over your own wife." Imran felt tired to his bones. "This is not a competition," he said. "This is about right and wrong. You tried to steal her home, Lena. You lied to me. How can I trust you after this?" Lena crossed her arms. "Everyone takes property from parents. It's normal. You're overreacting." "If you see nothing wrong with what you did," Imran replied softly, "then maybe we have a bigger problem than this apartment." He left the cafe with a heavy heart, knowing that their marriage might not survive this, but he also knew one thing clearly. His mother would not lose her home. Weeks passed, lawyers spoke. Messages went back and forth. There were angry phone calls, tears, and long nights of silence. In the end, Lena refused to fully admit what she had done. She said the documents were a mistake, that the notary had misled her, that she had only been trying to secure the family's future. She never spoke the simple words, "I am sorry." Mr. Patel advised Grace and Imran to send a formal legal notice. It warned Lena that any further attempt to claim the apartment would lead to a criminal case. The notice was clear and strong. After receiving it, Lena moved out of the home she shared with Imran and went to stay with her parents. She told them a different version of the story, but the legal notice spoke for itself. Imran felt broken for a while. He had not expected his marriage to reach this point. He went to therapy, trying to understand his own choices, his habit of ignoring red flags just to keep peace. Grace gave him space. She cooked his favorite meals when he visited, listened without judging, and reminded him gently, "You are not a failure. Sometimes people show us who they really are only when money and property are involved." One evening, several months later, Imran sat with his mother on the balcony of her apartment. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange light across the city. "Ma," he said quietly, "do you ever wish you had just given us the apartment? Maybe all this drama would have been avoided." Grace looked around her home, the framed photos, the worn but clean cushions, the small plant by the window that she had kept alive for years. "When your father and I were young," she began, "we had nothing. Not even our own room. We slept in a corner of someone else's house. This apartment is not just walls and floors to me. It is proof that hard work and honesty can build something real. She turned to her son. If I had given this place to you out of love, with trust and happiness, that would be one thing. But to hand it over because someone tricked me? Because someone forged my name? No. That would mean everything I taught you about honesty meant nothing. Imran nodded slowly. You're right, he said. I think I needed to see this too. To understand the difference between love and control, between care and greed. They sat in silence for a moment. The alarm system light blinked softly near the door, a quiet reminder of the night everything changed. Do you regret marrying her? Grace asked gently. Imran sighed. I regret ignoring my own feelings, he said. There were signs, times when she spoke about money like it was more important than people, times when she disrespected you and I told myself it was just stress or culture or something else. I didn't listen to my own heart. He looked over at her and smiled sadly. But I also learned something important, he added. No matter how old I get, I still need your advice. Grace laughed softly, wiping the corner of her eye. And no matter how old you get, she replied, you will always be my child. In the months that followed, Imran focused on his work and his inner healing. He did not rush into any new relationship. He and Lena eventually agreed to separate formally. It was painful, but it was honest. As for Grace, she kept living in her apartment. She invited friends over, joined a small reading group in the building, and even taught a few neighbors how to cook her special recipes. She refused to let fear live in her home. Sometimes, when she woke up at night and saw the clock showing 5 a.m., she remembered the alarm, the call from the security guard, and the calm words she had spoken let her in. She's about to get a surprise. The surprise, she realized later, had not only been for Lena. It had been for herself, too. She had discovered that she was stronger than she thought, that her voice mattered, that even in a world where some people would do anything for property, there were still things that could not be bought: dignity, truth, and a mother's love. And that apartment, her apartment, remained where it had always been, not just in her name, but in her story.